excited. I've had my coffee. I'm ready to dig into media and entertainment in the wild unknown that is 2020. We have a great group of panelists, so we are going to jump right in and talk about how everyone's kind of been pivoting in the industry based on their respective roles. I know for me specifically working in events, the last thing I did was throw an Oscar party for the Best Picture winner Parasite, and now everything's up in the air, so we will see what happens with that. But let's get started. Since we're dealing with the unexpected, let's go ahead and jump in. Jonathan, I will start with you. You launched Unger Media last year after working in-house at various companies. Talk to us kind of about what it's been like for you and your slate of projects navigating this.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney. Hi, everyone. I think the word pivot is really imperative in everyone's mind when everything hit, and being well-versed in unscripted. I worked in unscripted for about 17 years before launching Unger Media, and it really allowed for us to pivot into different directions and expand what exactly we were developing. Funny enough, it's actually become busier because we've actually enabled, just because in producing, you're basically putting all the pieces together. There's a lot that is similar in scripted in just the ways of communicating with people and seeing who's resonating with certain projects, and with content with a purpose as our byline. It's really allowed for us to continue focusing on those stories that either need to be told or are hitting an audience that is underserved, finding those stories that have a ripple effect. And so right now it's been, during this time, reading scripts, still connecting with people, focusing on finding new and upcoming talent, but also just getting a sense as to how everyone's navigating right now. Because I think we're all in a situation that, certain production companies are off the ground and they're having shoots and such, but still with a lot of guidelines. And so people are still just figuring it out along the way at the same time. But I think it's also how you view things. And it's been an exciting time, just really diving into scripted and podcasts, and even finding some documentaries that feel as if, well, especially right now with social issues being such at the forefront, that there's an opportunity to shed even more light on those issues. So with that lens, we've actually been able to pivot in a really great way. And also, with people like you too.
Well, love it. Well, this is funny. You've already touched on basically productions. And Raven, I know that you work at Tyler Perry Studios, and you guys have kind of led the force at actually already shooting a series and kind of doing it under different guidelines. Will you talk a little bit about your role and how that shifted?
Yes, and hello, good afternoon, everyone. So yes, when it comes to the pivot, strangely, it feels different, but we've still been in work mode. So I'm kind of like, I feel like, yes, things are different. I'm not in the office, but things are still getting done. So yes, I work in casting at Tyler Perry Studios, and we've basically postponed our projects for about 3 or 4 months, but we actually just started filming our next show, The Oval, this past Tuesday. And for us, we used to do in-person auditions. Now everything is via self-tape. I found it's a very interesting challenge for actors who are used to coming into the office to now figure out how to set up their own camera, audition, reader system. So we have lots of kids and spouses now for our auditions. But the beauty of it is, we've been able to still provide platforms for actors, for artists who are still wanting to audition and work. So kind of, what you mentioned, we are one of those production companies where we are actually filming. One of our guidelines is that everyone on our cast and crew has to quarantine on the studio if they're needed for filming. And we work really, really fast and really hard. So we're able to film a whole season of shows within 2 weeks. So because we work so fast, it enables us to kind of get 22 episodes out in a quick manner, and still have people being able to work despite the pivot that COVID has provided with us this year.
Amazing. Yeah, so it's interesting because at least you guys are at the forefront, so other people can kind of see how they're going to navigate their own projects and get those going. Yeah. Tad, talk to us a little bit about your production company. I know you work in historical documentaries, and this is certainly a time in history. So how's it been for you?
It's been absolute madness, but the way it's been for everybody. We've had to completely change everything that we do. We're not the same studio we were 8 months ago. We're not the same studio we were 8 weeks ago. First, the COVID-19 obviously impacted us all, and we had to make the big pivot to distance production, right? We had a major production partner who just furloughed everybody. So all of a sudden I had to figure out how to be a line producer, which is not what I signed up for. But to have to assume all of the roles of producer and director and writer for legal and creative and graphics and all of that kind of thing. So we had to change that. And we had to change from thinking about feature documentaries to thinking about digital micros. And then George Floyd was assassinated. And then we had not just think about what we were doing, but why we were doing it. And that completely changed the tenor of everything that we did, everything. So when we really looked at the kind of stories that we were telling, the kind of history that need to be told, the kind of voices that need to be boosted, the kind of people like me that needed to be removed from the process, frankly, so that we could make sure that we are using our resources to get other voices out there. So we changed everything. So that's kind of like the change of what we did. Then there's the how we do it, having to do everything at a distance. So, and doing it all digitally. So that is, with any kind of new production, having to work out what our agreement is with SAG-AFTRA, what our agreement is with ACTRA, what our COVID-19 policy is, as Raven was talking about, in terms of quarantining, that what our insurance deals are all about in order to be able to even get insurance to be able to go in any kind of production. We actually have a contactless production workflow now, which I wouldn't even know what that was a year ago. But to be able to work with actors who are making sure that they're taking the skills that they were building in order to do these self-audition tapes, well, now that's a part of production. How you're doing digital workflow to get everything up into post-production in terms of being able to share digital content, being able to, I have some friends who are even talking about distance directing using FaceTime during a scene. We haven't quite gone down that road yet. But this whole period has, as Jonathan mentioned earlier, really made us reconsider in the most fundamental ways why we're doing this in the first place. And that to me has been as much of a challenge as this is. We now know who we are as a studio a whole lot more than we did a year ago.
Silver lining, that's good. April, you're coming at it from a completely different point of view as an on-camera host. And will you talk a little bit about how that shifted interviews and booking guests and all of the things that you've kind of had to navigate with this? Oh, we can't hear you.
Everything became, of course, virtual. And so the people who were talking about projects that they had already shot, a year or months ago, were all doing virtual interviews. They were doing their own makeup. They were setting up their own cameras. And for me, it took my host and I out of our studio. So we would alternate days we would be in the studio and days we would be at home. In addition to that, towards the end of March, I'm also a full-time professor. So I host a TV show and I'm a full-time professor. So I had to change that up a little bit in regards to how I was teaching my classes, which were all in person, where we invited guests. It was a public relations class and a media and culture class. So we had lots of content because of how things were going and what was happening. And then I wasn't getting enough, I guess I wasn't doing enough jobs. So I created my own show called Conversations in Chaos, really out of a need to try to find my way through all of this mucky muck, as people say. I needed to find my way through COVID. And then, of course, with George Floyd, I was looking for direction. So I began to call on my friends who are like, celebrity psychologists and celebrities and saying, hey, do you want to do a virtual chat with me about how you're processing all of this? And do you have advice for other people, or give me some free counseling on a virtual medium? In addition to that, my husband and I have a church. And so we went from meeting with between 300 and 400 people a week to having to go virtual. So if you come to my house, it is a mess. There's studio equipment everywhere. My children are, I have 2 kids. One's in college. He's doing virtual classes. My daughter's homeschooled. She's doing virtual classes. My brother-in-law just got here from LA. He works in the entertainment industry. He's doing virtual meetings. So we're like trying to find a space in the house where we can all, use it and not use too much Wi-Fi and be able to talk. So, but I've become busier because I'm getting a lot of calls about hosting diversity and inclusion panels. I'm getting calls about doing media training. I'm getting calls about Hulu called and asked me to host something for their employees. So I'm really busy, with shorts on the bottom.
Exactly. The new attire that we're wearing. Well, this is interesting because actually everybody on the panel is located across the country. We have LA, Atlanta, Rhode Island, and Virginia. So I think that's a pretty awesome, it's very cool to think about the entertainment industry being all over the country. How do you guys feel that that's been a positive and a negative to a degree? Are you getting to talk to more people, pitching, to other people that you wouldn't necessarily get to be in front of their face? What would you say?
I would say it's definitely happened. I think oddly enough, it's almost an equal playing field because we're all industry-wise going through this together. So I think people are more willing to read product, more willing to read material, more willing to even have a general Zoom. I know everyone's Zoomed out by now, so it can still be a phone call, but people are willing to extend that. And so I think it is a time that everyone's kind of coming together in a way, but also being open to just product. I think there's a pendulum swing as well, just with programming overall. I think, we've been at times in our world and nation that there have been these moments where people are going to want to find just really positive, feel good programming and programming that feels like comfort food. And so that's been the biggest, I think, swing overall, at least from our end, is really just extending that, knowing that, basically reiterating that the stories that are out there that you're resonating towards or feel as if, these feel really unique, even if it's an article or even if it's a book you're reading, listen to that, because there's a lot of product that's getting made right now just based on articles, whether in the New York Times or across the nation in a small local paper, or even someone's life that they just self-published, and there's something really remarkable about it, and you can build something out of that. So I think it's just a time of reinvention overall and thinking outside the box.
Totally. Raven, have you noticed that you're seeing new people that haven't come up before for casting opportunities and things like that? Like, how is that working?
It's a really good time for actors because as a casting director, I personally have more time to maybe go through reels or that I may not have had time to go through before. But in addition, for instance, I know in terms of actors, a lot of MFA actors were really hit hard because they rely on their spring semester showcase, which they usually travel to LA or New York to do. And a lot of those showcases were canceled. But there's been a couple of schools have been doing or sending us digital showcases. So I feel like it gives us an opportunity to kind of be reintroduced to actors, to scout differently. I reached out to a school in Chicago. I was like, look, just send me monologues of your top students. And it's really nice to kind of meet new actors that otherwise I would have either been too busy or I wouldn't have been able to actually physically make it up to their city to actually audition them. So for me, I do think that there are advantages of, us kind of all being at home or in our offices. And we're able to kind of we're actually able to scout more talent during this time. We wouldn't have been able to do it before. So,
yeah, that's certainly a positive for sure. That gives people more opportunity.
And I just want to say, I think we're all at the point too that we've gone through that hiccup, because it was jarring in the beginning, but I think
figuring out our systems. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the new normal almost that we're living.
Yeah.
Tad, what have you found? Has it been a positive for you? I mean, minus all of the things that you've had to shift, that's a lot to deal with, but now you'll be able to deal with anything.
Yeah, I think that there's been, one of the things that's made us do is become hyper organized. We've really relied a lot on things like Studio Binder, these kind of sharing apps that enable us to go ahead and maintain contact with with workflow, who's responsible for what part of what project that is currently either in development or in production, or, you know, God forbid there's anything in post-production right now. But to be hyper organized in that kind of way. But the big benefit that I've seen, particularly with the actors who we work with, is the kind of blurring of roles that have led to a lot more creativity. That particularly because now we're focusing a lot more on how history matters today, what it's doing. We've created a whole new series called, based upon some James Baldwin works, so about we are our history. And some of the actors whom we started working with for the series have been very much involved with Black Lives Matter and with the social justice conversation, and in watching them putting themselves out there online and articulating their point of view and their connection to history really made us think, you know, that these lines that we have between producer and writer and actor, I realize that we have our contractual obligations there and we make sure that we abide by them, but to be able to make sure that we are including the kind of creativity and the ideas and the leadership, the vision and the voices that our actors have. That to me has been really the biggest thing, is that our actors have really embraced their roles as being co-producers of everything that they're doing, because they have the time. And because they have this creativity that's not just in front of the camera, that these folks are so multidimensional, and it's been a real privilege to be able to tap into that resource.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about content, because you've kind of touched on that a bit. Like, April, for you, are you seeing that you're basically reporting on and interviewing on different types of content with people and getting the opportunity, really, with the time that people have, to bring in more guests and that sort of thing?
Yeah, virtually, of course. I mean, we only allow one person in our studio. So some of the celebrities that we are used to being in LA have rearranged their lives and moved back home. And some of them are in Virginia. You have Pharrell, you have other people, Missy Elliott's from here, Timberland's from here. And you have quite a few other people that are now, you're seeing them in the, maybe not in the street, but you're seeing their social media that they're, at home, and it's easier to reach out to them on social media and say, hey, what's up? Why don't you go ahead and do this interview? And so people are kind of paying attention because they're isolating at home. In regards to content too, I'm seeing some really unique ideas where people were kind of stuck and they had to finish the season virtually. There's one show on CBS, I can't remember the name of it. It was a judge show where they ended up shooting the scene kind of like the Brady Bunch, and looking down at each other and looking up, and they talked about the difficulty in trying to look at the right space, because if I look at Raven, you can't tell I'm looking at Raven. I could be looking at the wrong person. And so that was kind of interesting. It brought a whole new level to the experience for people. And then I find that people are willing to listen to ideas too, even ideas that I have. They're contacting me and saying, oh, well, I saw that you did this interview with this person. Would you consider doing a project similar to this? And so it's really just opened up doors. And in addition, people I haven't spoken to in 10 years are now reaching out to me saying, hey, are you still doing media training? Can you help me out with this project? So
amazing. Yeah, it all comes back around. Definitely the context you meet throughout the industry. It's always good to keep those connections. And this has definitely been a time for people to do that. I mean, as we gear up, we're finishing out 2020. We'll see where this goes, but 2021, do you all see the slate of development being cut? Do you see it expanding into different types of content? What do you see the future for people wanting to pitch their projects and get that out in terms of dealing with what you already have?
I would say, at least, like, for instance, for us, we had, for example, we had a big live event that we were about to get out there and pitch to the marketplace, and then COVID happened. And so I think if you're doing a live event or some sort of concert or like something in that vein, then it still will be 2021. And I think people are mindful of that, but it's not as if people aren't hungry for product. I think it really is just that sense of everyone has time. I think everyone's trying to figure out the time management still. It's still kind of one of those things, and now we understand that everyone can work from home in some capacity. So what does that look like? But people are still willing to hear projects. I think it's a matter of when you're pitching, trying to figure out how it can be done during these times, whether it's limiting the amount of people within a series. I know even for formats, if you're doing a big game format, maybe trying to figure out how to do it not enclosed in a studio, or if there's an outside perspective, or even limiting the amount of people involved. It's just a matter of whether or not you can do it with a scaled back production. So I think it's a matter of not only coming in with that mindset, but knowing that once it all goes back to normal, still having an idea as to what it would look like when that happens. Because even though there are a lot of these specials out now that look, either in someone's home, or let's say the BET Awards where they did a fantastic job of making it look like actual set pieces, it does feel as if the creativity is expanding and we're finding different ways of what it looks like, but it probably won't look back to normal until 2021. I mean, at least that's what we're thinking. And I think that's what everyone across the industry is saying, and still moving towards, hopefully it happens before then, but knowing that there are just a lot of things out of our control. So all you can do is just have the hope and continue putting the pieces together. Otherwise, you just get stagnant. And no one in our community wants to get stagnant.
No, it's a lot of flexing and being kind of, innovative with that kind of stuff. What were you going to say, April?
I was going to just say, from the broadcast and people who are covering entertainment, it's a very frightening time, and educators. I had a lot of people in my department who didn't make it this year in the fall because we had cuts. In addition, if you look at what just happened at NBC Universal and E, they got rid of 3 shows. And, people had just up and moved their lives to New York because they decided to do their show in New York and moved from LA. And now, many of them are out of jobs, and then some of them are moving back to LA without a job or without, a definite deal. And so I think that it's going to require people like we are doing, pivoting, but also trying to find other opportunities or creating their own opportunities. Because if you're out of a job, then, you have to start getting creative of how you can maybe monetize some of the ideas that you have, maybe going on some of the social media platforms. And that's what, entertainment is dealing with too, is the streaming services. And so a lot of folks are cutting back because of that as well.
Absolutely. Raven, what would you say in terms of your all's content?
Yes. Oh, I think just overall in general, I think that a lot of, streaming services, networks are going to be hungry for content because there's been all this time where people haven't been filming anything. So I do think, like, if someone has an idea that can be, somewhat safe, COVID friendly, I think this is actually a really great time to get your idea out. Some of the things that we've had to pivot and adjust with is, we had a whole slate of shows that were already ready to be filmed and cast. We had to do things like, if there were any crowd scenes, we had to eliminate crowd scenes. We had to be aware of if there were like any intimate scenes with other actors, so even our extras, they're currently filming, and I think we are just kind of recycling like the same 10 or 15 extras so we don't have more people on set. So I think that, but I love seeing what's coming out. I know Jonathan mentioned like people getting really creative. One of our actresses that recently quarantined with us, while she was waiting for her scenes, like, she made a short film, and it was a horror film, and it was actually really good. And so I think that there are really creative ways to create content kind of within this space, within us having to distance ourselves and to isolate, that can actually create really interesting story. And I think that because networks are hungry for content, like, if you are able to do it, this is actually a really great time to get your ideas out. Just be forward thinking in making sure that it's COVID compliant.
And to Raven's point too, I think it is also just thinking outside of your head. Get out of your head and don't think that no one has the time to hear your idea. They're asked, like I hear all the time, well, you're probably asked so many different favors or whatever it may be, or you're probably so busy. People will make the time, especially right now, and people just want to connect. And so, like Raven's saying, if you have an idea, especially that fits right now, connect with those people. Just do a reach out, or just do outreach, and even try LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been a fantastic resource. I know it's had a renaissance over the last couple of years, but people definitely check it, and you never know who might respond to an idea. It just takes one.
That's how we met, me and Jonathan. I reached out on LinkedIn. So it's very, it does work for sure. As you speak to this kind of stuff, what do you see in terms when you're pitching or you're listening to new ideas? What are the trends of the content, like the focus of the content? Are you seeing more positive, hopeful content, socially conscious? What are the trends that are happening now that studios, network streamers are actually responding to the most? Anybody?
Well, I mean, I will say from what I'm watching as a viewer, I'm not as behind the scenes as you all are, but it's huge for, Black content with African American roles and stories about Black people and stories about courage and, big, good trouble and stuff like that. So, there's this big push and, we wonder if it's a trend, but there is a big push when I look at all my streaming services of all of this content that I didn't even know was out there. And so, of course, I believe that it's making other people say, oh, well, this is the time for me to do that story on this person, or this is the time for me to dig up one of my hidden figure stories. And so, I'm seeing a lot of that, and I'm hearing a lot of buzz of people talking about it.
Tad, what are you seeing in terms, since yours is so focused on historical documentaries, what are you seeing in terms of like coming up with new ideas and also pitching your current?
What we're seeing mostly is that folks are so hungry for content across the digital and media ecosystem. They really are. But that content has to be relevant. It has to be accessible. That the days of the macro influencer stuff we see is just being gone. But if you have, and the way we're looking at it, if you have content that is substantive. And it doesn't have to be, we're not talking about, we don't do Ken Burns, right? I mean, we're talking about stuff that is geared towards younger audiences that are in ways that are as relevant as possible to the kind of things that are going on in their lives. And that they're showing up in the news. And that if we're able to go ahead and recognize that we can capture that kind of content, that we can be true to the core of telling those stories, but that we can be flexible in our distribution rather than being wedded to particular formats. If you're wedded to a format, if you're wedded to theatrical release, you've got to see this as a feature. Talk to me in a couple of years, because right now it's about understanding the stories you want to tell and being flexible in the format you're going to use to tell those stories. Be flexible in terms of your channels and your distribution. Be flexible in terms of digital distribution, whether or not you can actually get to, because there's not, one of the things that we're really seeing, there's not a lot of money for development. Nobody's throwing development money at you. If you want money for a pilot, again, you're going to be waiting for a long time. But if you can show a proof of concept, if you can put together that sizzle, if you can turn that treatment into something that somebody can see move, that might be a risk that you have to take to get it in front of somebody, so that then they can see, you know what, this can work as a 5-minute micro, this can work as a 20-minute short, this can work across these the digital ecosystem, and then can be scalable. If you need to make a jump from an IGTV, from a Facebook Live, from something like that to a Hulu series, that you can have that idea of how your production structure is going to be achievable in terms of funding, but it's also going to be scalable. You're just not going to get all that funding. You're not going to get a lot of the funding that maybe a year ago for a good solid treatment or even just a spec would have gotten before. That, I think that the days of development funding are pretty much gone. But a lot more folks are open to proof of concept. If you got something, even if it's 60 seconds, that shows me that you can tell that story and what that story is you want to tell, that it's relevant and accessible, then come on, let's talk.
That's the thing.
Sorry, Jonathan.
No, go
okay. To piggyback off of what Ted was saying is what I'm telling my students who are in college, that get these skills, learn how to shoot, learn how to edit. And, there were different, like Adobe was offering some stuff for free, months back, and get in there on lynda.com, which is connected to LinkedIn, and learn how to color grade and stuff like that. Because if Ted is sitting there telling you right now, I'll look at some stuff, then go ahead and put it together and put your sizzle reel together. grab some people that you're quarantined with, shoot it, a rough cut of it, and get it in front of somebody, and you could possibly, get a deal. Jonathan?
I mean, basically, it took the words out of my mouth. It really is such a time to, in some respects, be patient. So like during this time, work on getting your product to the best foot forward, and know that, like Tad's saying, I mean, even Whitney and I, we've gone through something similar with a project we're working on, where, you think you have such a great proof of concept, and then it's a matter of trying to still figure out, like, let's say casting. You just never know what that note might be in response to your idea. So try to figure out what you can do right now in order to poke as many holes as possible in your concept and see, okay, did I get a 1 to 2 sheet treatment together? Great. Did I get a deck together? Great. Have I figured out a way to film a proof of concept? Great. If you feel like you've hit all of those angles, then you're in a really great place, and that alone you should be proud of accomplishing.
Absolutely. Have you all specifically done anything to expand your knowledge or your ideas? Like, what are little things that you have done to keep yourself sane, number one, but also to grow within the confines of what we're dealing with? Do you all have any specific examples?
I've learned how to produce a live stream show. I've learned how to direct it. I've learned how to direct a church service, which is like directing a broadcast. I know how to edit. I know how to shoot, or I have a kid that knows how to shoot. He's a little more advanced than I am. But, producing and putting things together, and also teaching people how to do that. So I have some interns that have gotten an opportunity to produce segments on my daily show on CBS, in addition to helping me produce my show that I'll be doing today at 7 o'clock if you want to come to my Facebook page. But, that's something that I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to StreamYard. I didn't know anything about that. But, now I know how to hook it up. I know how to hook up the camera. I know how to put the lights up. I was talent, right? I showed up. People put makeup on me. They put clothes on me. They gave me lights. And I was like 3, 2, 1. But now I know how to do it myself. And I think that makes me a better person. And it also makes me more valuable, so I don't have to pay other people to do it or expose myself to other people in order to get it done.
Yeah, it opens you up to many more opportunities to do it yourself and do other projects like that, for sure. Who else?
I think that for me, I work in casting. It's my 9 to 5, but I, for the past couple of years, have been really interested in getting into the producing content creation space. So this time has been great for that. It's been definitely a personal and creative challenge. So some of the things that I've been doing is like a project that I've written a couple of years ago. I actually did like a virtual table read for it. I've set up writing rooms to kind of help flesh out different scripts. I've been trying to gather other writers and content creators to see if I can possibly produce other people's work. So I have submissions from writers. In addition to just like learning myself, like getting into reading. I love a good masterclass. So Aaron Sorkin and another director, they've been kind of like my best friends in terms of, watching their daily masterclasses. But things like that have kind of helped me. Like, I feel like I have the time to be a student again. And that's been really a blessing in this time, for sure.
Totally. I love those master classes. I did the Shonda one and I was like, life changed. Who else?
Well, I was just going to piggyback off Raven and just say also those Variety has been doing a fantastic series of panels. Just look through even trades. That's been my biggest thing. It's just really soak in more knowledge and get a grasp as to how everyone's navigating, hear even globally what everyone's going through, and just get a broader sense as to the landscape. And Variety has done a fantastic just series of free panels. That's my biggest advice too, is just look and see, is it Hollywood Reporter? Is it a newsletter called Synopsis, Cynopsis? They do, Synopsis Media does some panels as well. Sign up for as many as you can. You might not be able to attend all of them, because luckily it is a time now that people are also willing to join panels like this. But it's a great way of just soaking in. It's also, you'll see people comment in the chat rooms and you can make a connection even that way. It's a really great time just to be communal overall.
Definitely. Well, now that we're on kind of the advice aspect, let's round out the panel discussion with that from each of you. If you have some more pieces of advice, I know as April mentioned, she teaches, as do two other people on the panel. We've had a lot of people ask questions about transitioning into the industry at this time. Any advice for that? But also going back to school, are there certain things that they should be doing, certain degrees they should be getting? So whatever advice you all can leave them with before the Q&A portion would be super helpful. April, do you want to start?
I don't want to say don't go back to school because I'm an educator. That's a tough question. I'll just leave that to your own personal decision, what you should do in regards to school. I mean, I don't want to lose my job as an educator, but at the same time, I think that this is the time to self-learn. If you are taking classes online, great. But if you can get yourself another skill, I saw that there was a young person who wanted to transition from being on stage to like a musician. And I'll just give you an idea of what we do on my show. So now we don't have live musicians. We used to have live music every Friday. What they do is they tape themselves and then we do a virtual interview. So they're still getting exposure, even though they're not coming on physically to our show. So that's why it's important for you to learn how to shoot, because the sexier videos, not sexy, but the prettier videos are the ones that get on our show. So if you're just shooting with your phone, it's just one shot, that's not going to be great. You want to have multiple shots. You need to learn how to have two cameras. You need to know how to edit. So in order to do that, that's an opportunity for you too. And then you're seeing all of this stuff with Versus, you know, Teddy Riley against Babyface. You could create some kind of content like that too yourself. It may not have the audience that they have because they have the name, but it still could create an opportunity for you. You could do a GoFundMe so that you could get paid. People know that artists are starving right now, and I'm supporting artists now that I see that are out there on their grind. So that's just one way that I think, but creating content and learning a new skill. My students were really, you know, depressed and telling me, Professor Woodard, I don't know what to do. I'm like, turn that energy into a product, write a book, write an article, start a blog, start your YouTube page or revamp your YouTube page. Do something so when we come out of this, you have something to show for it. You have some content.
Absolutely. Tad, what kind of advice do you have for our viewers?
I think the two things. So one is that you know, as April suggested, that the best film school is your first film. You got to get in there and do it. You've got to get in there and start creating your own product from concept through development to production, and see how all of those bells and whistles work. We were fortunate enough that this summer nothing this year has gone the way we wanted to, but we have a wonderful intern who we hired from UVA. She's a rising second year, who has joined us at a distance the entire summer. Her patience knows no bound. But what we wanted to make sure that she did, to be able to learn about the process and learn about the industry, is for her to create her own program, from concept through the pitching process, through writing a treatment, through writing a shooting script, through all of those different levels, to actually working with our director of photography to shoot it herself and to edit it and to think about distribution and to think about structure, think about narrative form. And that's what her main project has been from outside of Philadelphia all summer long. So I think that being able to have a community of people that you can bounce ideas off of, who will be creative partners for you, but that you're able to go ahead and engage yourself in the nuts and bolts of every aspect of creating in this business, is the way to go. That way, when you are thinking about producing or you're thinking about directing, you know exactly what you're talking about before you start criticizing lighting, or you're criticizing, oh my gosh, those sound levels are off. Well, then you know exactly what that means.
Absolutely. Raven and Jonathan?
I think that for me, you know, I think despite how difficult this year has been and all the curveballs and everything that's going on, I do think that something really beautiful is going to emerge out of all of this. And I think that particularly the entertainment industry is really going to transform and thrive through everything that's been going on with COVID, with Black Lives Matter. So I feel like if there are anyone out there who are artists and maybe not in the entertainment industry, but trying to figure out how to get in, like this is the time to make that effort to really jump in. I think that once productions, get a COVID plan to safely film, I think we're going to see a lot more people really more aggressively creating, making, buying, pitching projects, and as evidenced in what I do at TPS. So I feel like if I had any advice, I do think that the entertainment industry is really going to thrive, as a result of COVID. And I do think that do whatever it takes, whether it be a class, whether it be checking, networking with, even if it's just one person, this is the time to really make that step forward. If you've always wanted to do it, this is the time to jump into it.
Yeah, if I could just jump on that real quick, I think that is probably the most important thing to get across to people, that this is the time where all of those barriers that you thought existed between you getting your idea out in front of other people, they're not there anymore. That get your stuff out there on digital channels, get it out there on Insta, get it out there on TikTok for the time being, I suppose. Get it out there, because people are looking for this content. And this is the time where don't let anybody tell you no about anything. Those barriers to entry that had been so high for people before, in terms of, my gosh, I need a production partner in order to be able to get this to development and get into distribution. You can be your own developer. You can be your own distributor. Just make sure that you've got that creative band of partners around you, and nobody has any right to tell you no about your idea.
God, I want to bounce off what everyone has said, because what everyone said is so true. I think the Throughline's community. So for instance, I know Melanie, April, you touched upon it about musicians, stage performers making that transition. Another thing too, you could teach people. There are a lot of musicians out there, or people who don't know how to be a musician, who are looking to your craft and your talent to see whether or not they can expand their talent. I know, we have a few friends of ours that have done that as a way to still feed that creative beast within them, and still extend that to someone else. I think also just the through line in all of this outside of community is basically realizing what you know. So if you are a writer, write about what you know. Don't try to write about what you think someone's going to want to buy. In writing, it's all about authenticity and really writing what speaks to you and what is an extension of your voice. And that's going to cut through the clutter more than anything else, more than you trying to fit into a trend that's going on or feel as if you're hitting a sweet spot with what's going on in the zeitgeist. Just make sure always that it's authentically you. And really, just like Tad and everyone else has said, connect with people. Just do those cold emails, see who will respond. The right people will. And it just, even people like Raven said, it just takes that one person. And that one person could then allow for you to be referred to other people. Realize also that domino effect too. Don't feel as if you just have one, then you can stop there. Use that as a way to fuel you to reach out to other people too.
And Jonathan is right, because I have a homeschooler and now they're not doing a co-op. So I got to find music lessons online. So musicians, if you can teach and you know how to teach, there's OutSchool, there's Udemy, you can set up your own website. But I know a lot of musicians who haven't found a place to perform because the places are closed, but they have done one-on-one instructions, or they've done pods or whatever with kids, that type of thing. And it pays pretty well, because, parents are now going crazy trying to figure out how they're going to go back to work, and then also make sure that their kids either virtually are being educated, but are still getting exposure to all of the arts and all of the lessons that they need to learn.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, and we also clearly have a UVA community, and that is my advice to everybody. That's how I got into this industry. It's how I continue to grow in it, is by reaching out to fellow alums who have been awesome. I think people are always open to talking when you have a connection like that. And so I would just suggest keep on reaching out to people that have something in common with you, like UVA. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Eric for the Q&A portion. Thanks so much.
Awesome. This has been great. I'm going to jump right into the questions, and also remind everyone, after the Q&A, we're going to then move into the informal networking sessions that are optional. Again, 3 sessions, 10 minutes each. Great opportunity to connect with other attendees on this session. So the first one is for Jonathan, and also others, please feel free to add on. We've got an alumnus here that manages an Australian singer-songwriter gearing up to release his next album. Can you recommend any specific avenues to developing projects that are seeking new original music from emerging artists?
I would actually, that's a great question. First off, congrats on the album. That's huge. I would start posting all of that music, not only on YouTube, but also some sound databases that literally producers like me or other producers, there are certain databases that you can upload your music to so that people can actually find it, reach out to you, use it for their own projects as well. And I would also just start looking into who are some of the publishers too in your area who might have a connection even to local productions that are going on, to just start that ripple effect, start that domino even at a local level to continue expanding into other avenues.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Next one, and this is kind of open for everyone. Question came up around kind of workplace culture, environment. You know, sometimes it can be toxic, right? Have y'all heard individually or just things at your studio or what you've heard that is taking place to combat this type of workplace?
I mean, I know at least with Unger Media, we always wanted to start a culture with inclusion and acceptance and content with a purpose. So I think it's all about what the culture you want to make. I think at times there's a tendency to think that a toxic culture means everyone. And if you're someone who feels as if you're not going to conform to it, still be that person so that, you know, the other people around you who aren't that way either can look to someone as a beacon of light and joy and positivity. It's always on us to be of that attitude. I always think that way.
I think that for us, you know, what we're doing, because we're one of the first, if not the first productions to go back into a full-fledged filming during COVID. I think that for us, you know, we're everything that we're doing is so fragile, you know, like we're so careful to make sure that we're doing everything right because we have the health of every single person, you know, so much on our mind and in such focus. So I think that within like Tyler Perry Studios, there's been such a push. There's been so many community organizations within the quarantine. There have been so many things that have been done to boost morale, to eliminate toxicity so we can all get this project done and get it done safely. So I think within your organization, things that TPS has done because everyone's quarantined together, you know, is, you know, if you are someone who has created the project, they've been doing movie nights with independent projects that people have created. There, you know, there's like food nights and things like that. They have church every Sunday, you know, on the lawn of our studio. So I think that there are things that you can do because we just don't have the time to even manage toxicity within, you know, the restraints of what we're doing at the studio.
Not able to hear you, April. Great, we'll come back to it. Tad, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, it's you know, culture beats scheme every time, right? And to make sure that you have a culture of teamwork and a culture of even with something that might be seen as being hierarchical, like a studio, to recognize that everybody has their contribution that you can't make. Tougher now, right? Tougher at a distance. Like I was mentioning, our intern, she's never met any of the rest of us in person. I hired a production assistant that we've never met. How do you create a culture entirely at a distance digitally in this environment? And you got to work at it. You've got to work at making sure that there's transparency, that there are as many people, even in the virtual room, as possible, that everybody knows that there's somebody else to talk to, that there's somebody who's got their back, that there's somebody who, that they're part of a team, and they're an integral part of the team, no matter whether they're a production assistant or whether they're executive producer. And I think that making sure that you are going the extra mile, even in a digital distanced context, that you're able to do that, you're able to make sure that nobody's left behind in this. But to me, it's got to be transparency is the thing, that everybody knows, that people know that they've got their own team that they can rely on. They know what's going on. They know where everybody else is at, in order to make sure that everything can be seen.
Great. Touch with you, April, before I go to the next one. Haven't able to get it. All right, so I'm gonna move on to the next one here in the last few minutes. Again, kind of up for everyone. Any thoughts? I know April mentioned it earlier when it come up, but thoughts about stage works and stage performers or musicians trying to transition to the digital media. Do you think it works, or do you have advice on trying to transform?
Yeah, actually, we are working with an actor who normally works on stage, Eden Espinoza, who has done a lot of voice work on TV, but she hasn't done a lot of digital work. She hasn't done a lot of acting, but it is making sure that that those actors know that their fundamentals of approaching a role, of approaching a part, that those kind of things are translatable and transferable regardless of the medium. That they shouldn't think that because something is in a different format or is in a different channel, then it's not something that speaks to them. That even though there have been silos in the past, now I think that those lines are breaking down. So all of those skills that performers have in that respect, that we're able to go ahead and make sure if they are right for the part, if they are the right voice, then they're the right voice. And so people shouldn't feel like that there's any kind of artificial barrier to them in order to approach other kinds of opportunities.
Anything, everyone, to add to that?
I was just going to reiterate, just try to do even classes for people. Set up your own, teaching class where you're teaching. If you're a guitar player, you can teach parents and their kids how to play guitar. Maybe pivot that way and see if you can even do a side hustle at the same time.
Great, thank you. I think we've got a couple more come through. I know we're asking everyone to kind of go into the crystal ball here on the next one. Live music, entertainment venues. What do you think in 2021? You know, when people are kind of skittish about going into a closed-in restaurant, big venues. What do you think?
Plexiglass, can you hear me?
Hey.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I would say plexiglass. I mean, just put it in front of the artist so people can still gather, or you can do it outside. I love live music. There's nothing like live jazz or live acoustic music, like unplugged. So I just feel like, we got to make accommodations because the artists are starving, literally, and we got to get them back out gigging again.
I actually went out, I do events for awards season specifically, but I do some at private homes in LA. And one of the places that I do it actually is a mixing stage. So they mix films there and that sort of thing. So it's super cool, but they've actually gone ahead to expand into trying to do private concerts. That'll be smaller with big artists that are like VIP friends and family kind of thing, but to where it'll live stream to people. So things like that, I think, are what people are gearing towards. A lot of the big labels are talking about that now and finding ways to put their artists, get them involved in those kinds of performances. Clearly music's still being made. Taylor Swift produced a whole album and released it during this time. So they're definitely going to find ways to make this happen. And so I think that's one way that I know people are working towards getting concerts out again.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, there seems to be a trend with drive-in concerts and such. So people are figuring out different ways of doing it. And yeah, just like April's saying, I think the biggest push being because of all of these artists having these tours and their crew that was touring with them, there's a lot of livelihood that has now been lost. So like when he's saying, you know, everyone's just trying to think outside the box, seeing where are some of these places that you can do performances and hopefully connect with audiences in a different way. So it's a lot of innovative thinking that's happening right now in hopes that everything will, I think, really get back to normal by 2022 with live events, but like start showing a shift towards it in the middle of 2021. At least I know that's all of our hope. And especially with award shows and such.
How do you look to integrate in-person digital entertainment platforms? Kind of open to anyone there.
I feel like I need a little bit more information, in-person and digital entertainment platforms. So are you talking about like a reality series? Are you talking about a broadcast show? I don't know if that person can give me, Margaret can give a little bit more information, but I mean, from my perspective as a broadcast person, it is bringing the artist in and having them send a video and then talking to them virtually, or having clips or recorded clips that have already been produced and that are done nicely, and then, you know, talking to that person and following up. I mean, that's the only thing I can suggest with the kind of little bit of information.
Yeah, I didn't understand the question. Or if there's any other additional info to include.
I'll have her follow up. Margaret, if you want to follow up in the chat if we can, or just touch base with me afterwards, and I'd be glad to shoot it out to our panelists for a little bit more information on it. So as we close on this one, I just want to take the time. I heard multiple times of just kind of just start. Can anyone share a fun story as we close here of that time of when you kind of took that step and you just started and just put it out there?
I'll share my story. I literally moved out after UVA immediately, no job. Like I graduated from comm school. I'm like, I'm not going to be an accountant. I want to work in entertainment. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to give it a whirl. And actually immediately connected with the UVA base out here in LA. And that's how I got my first job. A fellow alum passed my resume along to Paramount, and I ended up starting there. And then that's when it turned into awards and events. And then I started my own events company where I work with different agencies. And you know, on the side, I'm also producing projects. Jonathan and I have a project together that we're producing and getting out unscripted. And then just kind of broadening all of that, I hosted on a few different digital platforms as well, like AfterBuzz TV. And so I literally just started taking classes and connecting with UVA alums, and literally things fall into place like that when you put yourself out there and connect genuinely and want to learn. So informational interviews have always been super good and helpful for me.
It's so true. I have the same story when I moved, because I came from UVA, moved to LA. You know, when I was at UVA, we didn't have a media studies program even. So it was like a really big shift to go from poli-sci major to entertainment, but always wanting to have entertainment be what my career was. And just like when he said, use this UVA alum, use the alum and alumni to really make that first connection, because there are a lot of people in this industry who are from UVA, excitingly enough.
I think that for myself, and like in terms of pivot, like I went to UVA pre-med, and we see how that's turned out. But it's the best decision I ever made to stop trying to pass Chem 141. But anyway, I think that somebody asked, that this is in terms of like really putting yourself out there. Somebody asked a question about, they said they're based in Queens, getting ready to shoot a series, and what opportunities await them, especially in Atlanta. So in taking your question, Eric, as well, I decided to co-create a project and film it in Brooklyn. Just a couple of us got, you know, some money together to film a project. We really didn't know what we were going to do with the project. But we filmed it, put it in some festivals that got some attention, and we were able to actually strike a licensing deal, a 3-year licensing deal. And it's currently out in the world. And so the person who has created their project, I think that if you're about to shoot your project, this is the time to strike up a very lucrative licensing deal. Keep ownership of your project, but license it out. If you're going to give someone a completed work, prepare to license it. But I will say, make sure you do all your homework. We made every mistake that you could possibly make. We had the Apple logo in all of our shots, and we still don't know if we're going to get sued by Apple to this day. But there are certain things that you can do to make sure you just do your homework if this is what you're going to do, because there is, I guarantee you, if this is a really well done project, and if you've done your homework well, someone will want to license this project for sure.
I would suggest going with your passions and finding a void. You have all this time now to look at all this content and see what people aren't doing. Maybe they're doing it, but you could add a little flair to it. And I would say, one of the turning points, I've had many of them because I've had a longer career than all of y'all combined. I'm a little older than you guys, but I would say that when I started Conversations in Chaos, really for a need for myself, I was trying to feel better about everything that was going on. As a result of putting it on my social media, Hulu reached out to me and asked me to do it for their employees in Seattle and in California. So little did I know it was a project that was important to me and a voice I wanted to get out. But then I also was able to share that voice and share my guests with people who needed to learn about diversity and inclusion at Hulu. And so, you never know who's watching. You never know what king is in the room. You never know what opportunity could become available. And I'm so glad that I'm a part of this, because I haven't called all my UVA friends. I'm going to be calling you, Raven, and Jonathan, and Ted, and Whitney. Y'all going to be like, oh no, April Woodard again. So, that's one thing I didn't do.
That's great. Anything, Tab, to close us out before we close with the formal session here?
I think that my best story that I think about far too often is I was working with a studio that has a mouse ahead of it, and they thought that I could produce my own film, and they were wrong. I tried and failed in every single way. I had been in front of the camera. I had been in certain roles behind the camera, and I thought, I got this. I can produce this thing. No problem. I was wrong in every way. And I made, as sort of mentioned, I made almost every mistake possible. I made mistakes with agents. I made mistakes with crew. I made mistakes with funding. I made mistakes with everything. And it ended up being just a complete disaster. Except out of that disaster, I learned a lot of humility and a lot of what I do not know. And a lot of what I need to rely on other people for, and to rely on other people for that this is a collaborative effort. And but the main thing is that not to be afraid to fail, to realize that there is all kinds of productivity that comes from failing to do things 15 ways, because you'll find that one way in which it works. And that was just an invaluable experience for me. Even if it ended up being this chaotic a mess, it was perhaps the most beneficial experience that I've ever had.
That's great. Thank you. Well, this has been great. I know we've taken us over a few minutes, but I feel like I can grab it back because I kept talking at the beginning there. So again, a very special thank you to each of our participating alumni here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight and being able to share more about your career that that other alumni are able to glean from.